I'm going to start by saying hello to everybody. We're going to do a little bit of time travel here because at the moment, Kathryn and I are here speaking together at the end of July, but we will be speaking to you all in November as part of the Family Voice Annual Event. So it's a slightly strange, we're in the middle of summer. So we've been working all year at Family Voice to prepare an annual event that we're focusing on the transition from primary to secondary school. And most of you now will have put in your preferences for if you're in year 5 for your next school. Some of you will be going through an EHCP process, others not. But we know that it's a worrying time and there's quite a lot of anxieties, particularly when your child has additional needs. And so we thought that we'd invite Kathryn Hollins to have a bit of a chat about what we could do as families, as parents, to help that go more smoothly. So, Kathryn, do you want to maybe start off by introducing yourself for those parents who don't yet know you?
Yes, I'd love to. Hello to everybody, and thanks for joining us for this. I'm a child psychiatrist by background, and I'm always really interested in all the different sorts of work I do in Surrey, in thinking about what do children need and what do parents need and what do families need in order to create a happy, healthy life that feels good, really. And of course, every family has particular challenges, opportunities, things that are difficult, painful, things that are great. And we're here to think about you and your families and what might be particular to you and unique to you. And that's what I'm interested in. How do we support you in the things you're wondering about?
So I suppose if I kind of jump in, one of the big reasons that we wanted at Family Voice to focus on this particular part of a child's journey is that we hear from parents again and again and again that they reach year 4, they might have finally settled into primary school being okay. Some of them will be loving it. But when their child has an additional needs, parents come up to us and say, but they're never going to survive secondary school. What can we do?
Yes.
And that, as year 5 and then year 6 come in, become this huge, enormous monster. It becomes really, really worrying. And I wonder, if in your work with families, is this something that you come across as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, my heart goes out to each of the families listening, because I know it's a really worrying time. And I think it is for all families, isn't it? Whether you have additional needs or not. But there are even, very specific ones that come up about how on earth is this going to work? Is my child going to survive this? Are they going to enjoy it? Are they going to learn? Is it going to be a good experience for developing their life journey? So I think getting worried and anxious is very common in the families that I meet. And you and I have talked before, and I've met families through Family Voice, and we often think, don't we, about just the level of anxiety and worry about the next stage, anticipating. And so I guess that's number one, isn't it? I think to anticipate and know that it's okay to kind of think, right, we can do things, we can anticipate, we can have some guidance, we can plan. Our children are learning all the time. Things do keep changing. Our children are developing at their own particular rate, and that can be okay if we can find ways of getting the support that we need to help them do that.
So can I ask you, I'm thinking very much about the families who in November 2022 have got a child who's in year 6.
Yeah. So
they will have done the process of applying to secondary school, but they won't yet know which school it is. They might have a good idea because, it's the one that most ones go to. But I suppose I wonder, as a parent with a child who may be worried or who has needs that make that transition difficult, what could we as parents do, I suppose, from that September time and through into the February time? What can we do in working with our child's primary school to begin to prepare that transition?
Yes. So first of all, it's, what support is helping now, and is that same support likely to be needed in secondary school? And to be asking, your current teachers, different professionals, practitioners working with you and your child. Is this kind of support going to be available in the school that we are thinking our child's going to go to? And if not, what do you think would be more appropriate, or what will be available? So that it's really okay to ask those questions and start asking them and say, you know, what needs to happen to mean that my child gets the support that they're getting right now in the new setting? And if it's not the same, how will we get it in a different way?
It's really curious to me that you say that, because I think I remember very much in that time, and I hear it from families, is we find something that works, and so we want it to carry on the same way. And I think what we forget, well, I think a lot of us are very aware that in secondary school that can't happen, and that's really worrying.
Yes.
And as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking, oh, I think one of the other things that we forget is that our children change as well.
They're growing up, and actually they will need something different, and they'll want something different, and they may not need things in quite the same way. So they'll be, you know, going into puberty and adolescence, and so what we think right now might be what they need, and what they think right now they might need in a year or so's time, they might be like, no, mum, I'm not having that, you know, that's not for me. I'm not a young child anymore, for example. And yes, so at the same time as having additional needs, they are also on the ordinary developmental path of being a child, turning into a young person, going through adolescence. So the way in which support is offered may need to be different for the same issues.
And
one other thought, I mean, what is also true is that the secondary school environment is very different from primary. So they may also need some other types of support that are very different to right now. So a very obvious one is you've got to navigate your way around the school in secondary. Now, depending on the secondary school, might be, you know, it might be different as to how much that's an issue from the beginning. Some, you know, the whole class goes around together and, you know, you're not doing it on your own. In others, you might feel a little bit more like you need to know where you're supposed to be going. And that you might know that that's going to be quite tricky, you know, for your child. You can anticipate that already. So there are things like that where if you sit down with your current teachers, where you might be able to say a question like, knowing what you know about my child, and knowing what you know about secondary, what are the kind of issues we might want to work on this year to help prepare my child for that? Because we can do some really good work together between this November and next July to mean that we all feel more confident.
And do you have any tips, Kathryn, for parents who feel that their school, their child's teacher isn't hearing them, and I know I used to feel that with some staff that they saw me as an extension of my child rather than another adult.
Yes.
Have you got any tips for navigating that?
Well, I guess it's thinking, who else can you bring into the conversation? You know, is it the Senko? Is it the head of year? Is it their pastoral lead? Or who else in the school? Who do you have a relationship with? Is it the previous teacher? You know, would that be useful? Oh, I think I can hear a phone in the background, but ignore that. You know, what is, you know, who do you already know within the school? Is there somebody who you feel you could say, I'm not quite sure what to do, or something feels a bit stuck? We need to kind of open up this conversation. So that's the first thing I would do. If that's not an option, I think I would talk to Family Voice. Whether you can have an advocate who might advocate for you and think with you about this.
So it's interesting because it's a really good point. At Family Voice, we don't advocate for individual families. We're not allowed to. Yes. But what we have done quite successfully in the last year is where we found that we've had quite a few parents from one school come and have difficulties, some good things, some bad things. What we've done is we've gone into the school and what we've done is just presented what we do as a forum. And that's allowed us just to get the conversations between the teachers and the parents going in a slightly different way. So one of the things that I find when I go into a school, for example, I'm really, really aware of the physical environment because of my children's needs. So I'm really on high alert. And in one of them, I remember we were in, I think it was in the gym. And as I was talking, I was looking around and I was saying, you know, as the mother of an autistic child, I'm looking at this wall where you've got, it's a lovely white wall, there's nothing on it. And I'm feeling calm. And then I look at the other wall and there's lots of posters and lots of colorful things. And I know that it's beautiful, but with my children's head, it immediately I can feel my heart rate rising. I can feel really anxious and just overwhelmed. And it was really interesting because the feedback I got both from parents and school. So from parents, I got the, oh my goodness, you get it.
Yes.
And from the school, I got, we hadn't thought about that. That was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I think Family Voice can offer something like that, where we just come in completely separately.
Yes.
I think you're right. It's really interesting to hear the kind of advocate. And I wondered what your take would be on, well, what if as a parent, I bring somebody else to make sure that I keep my cool and that I make the points that I want.
Absolutely. You know, I think we need anything that opens up space for reflection, anything that gives us the ability to ask the questions that we need to ask, and also helps us remember what people say, because it's quite hard when we're feeling emotional or worried to really hold on to things as well. So I think the point is to keep persevering and to feel that it's really okay to ask those questions, and also to assume that this is a good expectation. You want to do the best for your child. So there will definitely be things that you can do to kind of prepare. You might also, you know, I was thinking about the induction process for a new secondary school.
Yes.
You know, some schools are brilliant at saying, for some children, we'd really like to invite you to come and visit a few times before the September. And that can make a huge difference. You know, I've had families tell me that their child comes back glowing because they've made a connection, you know.
Yeah. And I suppose actually, if you can, even if it was right at the end of term or even before the September term, to be able to go in and navigate the buildings without others, that could make a huge difference, couldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of almost working out some of these some of them can be quite small things, and to see them as being possible. That's why it's good to talk, I guess, to other families and parents, because, you know, it's tempting to think, oh, well, surely that won't be possible. But you think, well, why not? You know, why not?
So one of the big things, we won't talk about what happens if you don't get the school you were hoping for. I know one of our other talks is likely to come into it, and we've got limited time. I'm thinking once we start that big new secondary school in year 7.
Yes.
One of the big differences as parents seems to be that we've spent 5-6 years meeting other parents at the school gate, dropping our children off, coming and being, we hold them, don't we? And then all of a sudden in year 7, that community doesn't exist in the same way.
Yes. Yes.
So it can feel really difficult to have a connection. I just wonder, from your perspective, how, first of all, is it a good idea to, as a parent, try and build that relationship with the school staff, and how do you go about it in that secondary school environment?
Yes. I mean, yes, I think it's great to be proactive. I also think it's great to remember that other parents will be feeling a bit bereft about not meeting other parents. So if you see ways in to meeting other parents, do it. You know, arrange a coffee with someone, be courageous, reach out, because others will be grateful that you've done that. And in terms of the school staff, again, see it as being perfectly normal, because it is, to connect and make relationships with teachers and with others in the school setting, and even start, you know, during year 6, you know, once you know the school that you're going to, reach out and make a connection. If you've got a child with additional needs, it may be very appropriate, and it may be the usual practice anyway for that secondary school, but there may be appropriate to have a meeting during the summer term where you can share ideas about what will make it possible for your child to settle in well at the beginning of the new term, and start, you know, find out who would be your contact person, you know, who, and if your child is someone who everybody knows is going to really struggle at the beginning of term, who might you email regularly? A bit like, you know, in primary school, you might have a book, or you might have some other connection. Set it up, you know, say, do you know what, in order to make this work, I need to have someone that I can email to check in with, and I need you to email me back and say how the week's gone, or if there's a problem, or if something's gone well, who will that be? So not a yes or no question about is that possible, but saying this is really what will make a difference. How should we make it work?
I think that's really helpful, because it can feel that there seems to be this whole set of unwritten rules, don't there, that we
Yes.
kind of assume that us reaching out to a secondary school, we're kind of somehow crossing a line that shouldn't be. And it's really helpful to hear from somebody like you that actually what we're talking about is normal human interactions, isn't it?
Yes. And there are many fantastic, thoughtful, experienced teachers, aren't there, in secondary schools who are there because they love seeing children develop into and flourish into, thoughtful, competent young adults. They love that process. So if we can show what will help our child do that, then that will be met usually with a very good approach. And if it's not, then talk about it with other parents and with other advocates, whoever that may be, someone in your family, a neighbor. Think, I'm not quite sure why this isn't working. I need to find a way of having this conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so there's two things in my mind. I will do one at a time.
Yes.
One of the things that we hear quite a lot about, and there's certainly a lot of worry about, is that secondary school is a lot bigger. It is a very, very different environment. And we do hear quite a bit from parents of children with additional needs that bullying tends to come into play in year 7 in a way that maybe they haven't experienced before. And I wondered, I suppose, curious whether that's partly to do with the age they are, and there's a kind of different things. And I suppose, how can we support those children who are on the receiving end, but then also maybe our child is the one who's doing the bullying, and how do we, how can we approach that situation
and I guess
without escalating it?
Yes. And I guess that points to the fact that one of the things that's happening in the school setting is that children are learning about the complex world of relationships and friendships. I mean, already that's happening in primary school. That it makes it's good as parents to spend some time every day finding out about what works well and what doesn't, with friends or with peers. That's a really good investment of your time, and it takes time, and it takes 1,000 times to keep on working away and being sympathetic and saying, oh, that didn't work, or that did, or not being judgmental as much as possible, but to be curious and interested and say, oh, that sounded difficult, or right, so I wonder how they would have felt when you hit them, but be interested if they're the bully, and in a way help them to kind of experience and think about it from different perspectives. We've got a role as parents to do that, haven't we? Think about whether there are other things that proactively you can help your child with outside school. I always advocate for being part of a group that's not not with children who you're at school with, whether that's for some that will be something physically active, for some it'll be more something like guides or scouts, for some it will be something music, who knows, it could be anything, but somewhere where maybe even you can be involved a bit, so you see a bit the relationships that you don't see as well at school, but you kind of can see why it is your child ends up on one side or other of the equation. And you might be able to, with that group of adults who are involved in that activity, be part of helping your child learn more about themselves and what's going on. So that's sorry.
It feels like a really important point. It's I'm because I tend to overshare, I'm really struck by the fact that I have 3 young people now who had really complex needs. They ended up needing specialist school, and at the time it felt like a saving grace because they were really in not a good way. On the other hand, they've ended up with no friends in their communities at all, and actually very few friends. And one of the things I struggled with was finding a way to find those outside school activities. Excuse me. I know at Family Voice we do a lot of work to try and identify local groups. And actually Surrey has a lot of different community activities for children with additional needs, all inclusive ones. But I think that for me feels like a really important tip, to actually make the time
make the
to
time.
develop outside school
Yes, yeah,
new connections.
because that will really enable your child to develop their emotional intelligence through understanding more about it. Doesn't mean that some of the behavior is acceptable, of course, in the school setting. So it still is completely appropriate to talk with teachers again and again about what's happening, you know, either way around. And I think teachers, you know, and schools are interested in how to support friendships and how to support peer relationships before they get to the bullying stage. But it may take some work on your side as well as a parent to keep going back to school and saying, this is happening, you know, we need to do something about it, because it's not okay for my child or for the children in this group. And of course that might be now not only the kind of face-to-face difficulties, but social media related. And so that also is absolutely right to think about. And if that feels a bit overwhelming, and I think it can do meet with other parents, you know, don't do this alone. Talk to other parents, because they will be feeling similarly unsure at different ages with their child as to how to help their child to be safe, and you know, in all the ways that being safe emotionally means.
I was really struck. I know we're coming to the end of our little chat, but there are a couple of things that you said to me just before we kind of came together, and that was the notion that as parents, we're actually adults, and if we can see a way, you know, if a secondary school doesn't have an induction process, why not be the one to trigger one, to create one?
Yes.
I know one of the things that worked amazingly well for one of my children was the school had a mentor or buddy scheme. So every year 7 was paired with a year 9 or a year 10 pupil.
Yes,
and that it didn't always work, but when it did, it was absolutely phenomenal for both parties. And again, that notion of what we're talking about is developing adult relationships with the other adults in our children's lives, isn't it?
Yes.
And being able to have conversations where you say, well, why don't we try this, because that could work.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that feels like the biggest message really of what we're discussing, doesn't it?
Yes. And I guess that the link to that, the fact they've not done it before doesn't mean they can't try it now. So there doesn't have to be a precedent for this. You know, go for it. You know, say let's see if this could work for my child. The other thing that is on my mind as you're talking is that I think one of the biggest helps to some of the families that I've met with, one of the biggest things has been to find a way for a young person to have a connection with someone they trust, other than parents,
mom or dad, you
know, someone else. And that might be, as I said, through one of those activities outside school, or it might be a mentor type role. It might be someone who does some particular therapeutic work with them, or some social story work around understanding more about relationships. It could be all sorts of ways in, but I think to consciously think about that as a parent, who does my child have that they can get to know, or how might I make that possible in the year or two ahead? This is a slow burn, you know, but it makes a difference to them on their journey into kind of adolescence and into adulthood.
I think that's really helpful. Thank you so much. I think the one thing I'm going to close us off with is that what you said just before that was the go for it. Just because there isn't a precedent doesn't mean you can't create one. And I suppose also that reassurance and reminding parents that you as a parent are an adult. You know your child.
You know your child.
And you should be able to speak to their teacher as a peer, shouldn't you? And work together around that child. And
if things aren't working, listen to your gut, and you know, be on the side of your child, you know, really be with them. And if they need something to be different, you know that, you know, don't struggle with the thought about whether or not you've got it right. You know it. So really be on their side, and you know, celebrate all of their talents alongside everything else that's going on for them.
Oh, isn't that a brilliant way to end? Thank you so much, Kathryn. As ever, I could keep talking to you forever, but I think we've probably covered the round for this.
Lovely to chat.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.